Good evening, everyone. It's so good to have you all here. I'm Minnie, first MSW, your MC for the session. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the second session of this Crystal Anniversary celebration of School of Social Work, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, Bangalore. Before we begin the session, there are a few instructions to the students. Kindly mute yourself and turn off your video until the end of the program. Remember to fill in the feedback forms as it appears on the chat box. Do not delay in giving your feedback as it would be closed after a specific time. Well, molding a team of students from extremely diverse socio-cultural and ideological backgrounds in the task of transforming the world to bring in more social sensitivity and empathy in human beings is a big challenge.
It's gone, huh?
And that is what is being successfully being done by the School of Social Work for past 15 years. It's a pure, clear, and sparkling achievement for the school, and we are proud to share these moments with all of you. Being a tenacious person and having a never say never attitude and good humor is truly inspirational. Let me heartily welcome Dr. Father Augustine Lourdes, Dean, School of Social Work, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, for the welcome address.
Dear friends, it is said that the dead cannot cry for justice. It is a duty of the living to do so for them. The series of social justice lecture is a cry for social justice. Father Stan Swami, when the Honorable High Court allowed him to be taken to the hospital, a visitor went and told him, "Father, we are fighting your case." A feeble octogenarian who couldn't even hold a cup, he closely called him and said, "Please don't only fight my case, but fight for thousands of people who are languishing in prison." Even the weakest moment, it was a cry for social justice. And that is the aim and goal of the School of Social Work. And we have an eminent and apt personality today to talk about social justice to us. You know, she's none other than Tista Settlewart. She is a journalist. She's an activist. She's a civil rights activist. And she has been working for social justice for the last 4 decades in his life. Ma'am, we are extremely privileged to have you. Your experience, your passion can shape our students towards social justice in the future. A warm welcome to you, ma'am, for this second social justice lecture during the Crystal celebration of the School of Social Work. Next, we have an eminent person, Rev.Dr. Hubert De Silva, the rector of St. Joseph's College Autonomous. He's a great motivator of the School of Social Work, and he challenges all of us, challenges to be better, best School of Social Work ever. A warm welcome to you, Father, for this social justice lecture. We also invite Reverend Father Dr. Joy James, the Vice Principal of ISI Bangalore. His presence adds always courage to our department as well as the School of Social Work. And I also am happy to invite all others, our NGO collaborators, our students, our well-wishers, everybody else always who motivates us to do better in the society. Let this social justice lecture inspire to cry out for social justice, to make this place, the world, a better place for everyone. A warm welcome to all of you for this social justice lecture. Thank you.
Minnie, I think you're on mute. Minnie, check your mic now.
Yes, sir. It's okay now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is okay now. Thank you, Father. Kindness, genuine connection, and a smile can make the world a better place. This evening, we are witnessing the second session of our 10th Social Justice Lecture. In 2011, we had started this under the aegis of Professor Kiran D. Jeevan. I invite Sir to speak a few words. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minnie. Celebrating the Jesuit pedagogy of social justice, the School of Social Work, now and then Department of Social Work in 2012, initiated the Social Justice Lecture. The idea of this lecture is to encourage critical thinking, provoke healthy debates, and challenge assumptions. The Social Justice Lecture was inaugurated by Swami Agnivesh in 2012. And since then, we have had Dr. Thangaraj, Dr. Kancha Ilaya Shepherd, Dr. Vandana Shiva, the former Chief Justice of India, Justice Venkatachalaya, Mr. Bezwada Wilson, the Magazine Award-winning speaker, to name a few. We just heard the eloquent address of Dr. Valson Thampu, and soon we will hear Ms. Teesta Satalwad. The ideas of these lectures should prompt participants to think critically about the historical context of social justice issues while focusing on the current social and economic justice challenges and the interdisciplinary thought and leadership skills necessary for meeting such challenges. This was the reason why the department envisioned this, and thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. Over to the MC for the session.
Thank you, sir. Few people convert every challenge that come their way to an opportunity and shows exemplary courage and dedication while doing it. Let me invite our vibrant Dr. Alan Godfrey, Head, School of Social Work, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, to introduce our guest, Ms. Teesta Satalwad, for the lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Minnie. Dignitaries, staff, alumni, and friends, a very good evening to everyone present here. As a moderator, I would like to welcome Mrs. Teesta Satalwad, and I would like to read a gist of Madam's profile here. Mrs. Teesta Satalwad, as it is written on her Twitter page, is a chronicler of the times, activist in the law, activist in human rights, in citizenship crisis, forest and land rights. She is an Indian civil rights activist and a journalist who hails from a family rooted in a legal heritage, but took over her career on journalism. She is the secretary of Citizens for Peace and Justice, an organization formed to fight for justice for the victims of the 2002 Gujarat riots. Mrs. Teesta Satalwad was awarded POCL Journalism for Human Rights Award in 1993, Chameli Devi Jain Award for Outstanding Women Media Person in 1993, Maharana Meva Foundation's Hakim Kansur Award, jointly with Javin Anand in 1999, Human Rights Award of the Dalit Liberation Education Trust in 2000, to name a few. Ms. Teesta has authored the chapter When Guardians Betray, the role of the police in the book Gujarat, The Making of a Tragedy, edited by Siddharth Varadarajan and published by Penguin. The book is about the 2002 communal riot happened in Gujarat. We are very happy that Mrs. Teesta Satalwad is here with us today. We are very happy to have you with us. And before we could move into Madam's session, I would encourage the participants to listen to it and make questions. This particular session would go on for the next 25 minutes. Followed by that, we'll be taking up question and answers for 10 minutes. Over to you, ma'am. Yes. Ma'am, you're on mute. Can you hear us?
you hear now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes. We could hear you
Okay.
now. Yes, yes.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you so much for the extremely generous introduction. And I'd like to begin by, first of all, wishing the faculty, the students, the alumni of the St. Joseph's College of Social Work, Bangalore, at this Crystal Jubilee celebration. All the eminent names mentioned, Father Augustine, the Dean, Rev.Dr. D'Souza, Rev.Dr. Joy James, Professor Kiran, and Dr. Alan Godfrey. Thank you so much for having me. It is really indeed wonderful that the vision of social justice that the Jesuit community so assiduously follows all over the world is being brought to fruition in your institute. I'd like to also dedicate today's lecture to somebody who inspired us all and left us extremely painfully. And it was very, very painful that it happened in my city and my state. Father Stan Swami, a living saint in a sense, but as much as saint, he was a person of the people. I would like to dedicate today's lecture to him. India's stumbling march towards social justice, the caste, class, and community obstacles. Friends, at the foundation of every society and state, which has a commitment to social justice, is the non-negotiable belief that everyone deserves economic, political, and social rights and opportunities. Simply put, among the main principles of social justice include access to resources, equity, participation, diversity, and human rights. It is now 71 years since India embarked on a principled and enlightened path with a goal outlined in the document that said it all, our Constitution. A march towards social justice, as it were, a vision encapsulated after 299 hardworking days by the Constituent Assembly that sat for 18 long months. In the midst of it, we had a painful and bitter partition. Months before January 26, 1950, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's prescient words today come back to haunt us. He had warned in his final speech in the Constituent Assembly dated November 25th, 1949, political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base social democracy. What does social democracy mean? It means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life. They form a union of trinity in the sense that to divorce one from the other is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. Without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Without fraternity, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Without fraternity, liberty and equality could not become a natural course of things. It would require a constable to enforce them. When we look around us today, my young friends, when we look at the India of today, where do we find this commitment, this foundational commitment to social justice? If we actually look at the plight, the status, the condition of our most marginalized sections, we could possibly, regrettably say that we don't present an encouraging picture. In fact, we present a rather sorry picture. Just a few painful examples I would like to give from the last 1 week alone. August 4th, August 5th, 2021, a young Indian woman was part of our proud Olympic hockey team, and we lost finally to Great Britain after a valiant fight. The vile caste abuse that this incident unleashed was shameful and shone a bitter light on both Indian society and state. When more privileged caste youth in the village of our star player, Vandana Kataria, who is a Dalit, burst crackers in front of our home when the team lost, who came out and spoke? She's India's women hockey star, but she was subject to vile casteist abuse. Don't we as a country and a society not just owe an apology to her, not just as a tokenism, but do we not need to look at the whole issue of caste in its face And remember the words of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, Baba Sahib, when he said that what I want is not just the abolishment of untouchability from the constitution, I would like caste system itself to be abolished. Let's go back 4 days before that to Sunday, August 1. Even today, protests are continuing for the 4th and the 5th day over the alleged, quote unquote, we have to say alleged because the trial is not over, gang rape, murder, and forced cremation of a 9-year-old girl in the Indian capital, Delhi. Again, a Dalit. She had just gone to fetch water when not only was she gang raped shamefully by not just the crematoria authorities, but by the priest in the crematorium. And her body was found in a completely mutilated condition by her parents. Are our reactions to different kinds of caste crimes, communal crimes, gender crimes the same? Or does India calibrate its response depending on the class, caste, and community of the people against whom these are perpetrated? In 2018, let's go back and see another 8-year-old girl from the Bakharwal community. The court has forbidden us to take her name. It's known as the Katua gang rape now. Actually, the rape took place in January that year, if I'm not mistaken, January 17. But the abdication of moral and constitutional responsibility by the media allowed the incident to only come to light nationally in the month of April, much, much later. Not only was it bad enough that this young girl from the Bakharwal nomadic community was gang raped in Jammu region, Supreme Court finally had to transfer the case out of the state into the Punjab and Haryana, Chandigarh Sessions Court. But a supremacist organization called the Hindu Ekta Manch actually took out processions protecting those who were accused in this heinous crime. Friends, Tamil Nadu, the land of social justice, Dravidian languages, rights, Periyar, and a rich tradition against the caste system, has also seen a growth in not just anti-Dalit violence, but also on the young people who make intercaste marriages. So it looks like every region of our country has been infected 70, 71, 75 years after independence, and we gave ourselves the constitution. We are still faced with this inherent structural inequality. Coming back to the point that access to resources, equity, participation, diversity, and human rights, we need to ask ourselves, who has the access to jobs? Who has the access to employment, positions in government and constitutional bodies? Who inhabits our courts and our educational apparatus? Who are the people who make up our police, the CBI, and other law enforcement agencies? Who are the people who make up the intelligence agencies? Is there a structural glass ceiling that prevents India's diversity and India's most marginalized sections from making it into these positions and institutions of democracy and governance? And if there is, what does it say for Indian democracy 70, 75 years after we won independence? In my work as an activist and writer, I came across many instances, but some hallmark moments need to be shared. When one began this career, it was after the very brutal targeted violence against India's largest minority, 1984, then 1992. We saw the anti-Sikh violence in the Delhi, in the country's capital in 1984. This country has witnessed the Nellie massacre in Assam in February 1983. What one saw with this targeted violence was the fact that institutions and agencies of democratic governments that ought to, in a constitutional democracy, look after the equality and equal rights of all, in fact function in a discriminatory manner when violence breaks out, when access to jobs is the issue, when access to education is the issue, when administrations decide where schools have to be built or where police stations have to be set up, where water tanks have to be built in our cities. So you see a kind of structural, institutionalized exclusion of increasingly large sections of our population over the years. A huge challenge for all of you who are entering the field of social work. How do we tackle it? How do we tackle it so that we manage through the processes that we engage in to reduce the structural inequality and lack of access? That is the question that we need to grapple. One looked at the Constituent Assembly debates. One looked at the 299 days and the different women, castes, sections, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Jaipal Singh Mudda, an Adivasi intellectual, the winner, by the way, of the gold medal and the captain of India's hockey team, also part of the Constituent Assembly. And one asked oneself that how come, if the Constitution gave ourselves the fundamental rights under Chapter 3 and the directive rights under Chapter 4, why did it take, for instance, Indian Parliament 56 years to pass the Forest Rights Act in 2006? Why did it take Parliament to recognize that the Civil Rights Protection Act of 1955 was not doing its job? So the Scheduled Rights Protection of Rights Act was passed in 1989 and further amended in 2015. Why did the Sachar Committee, when it brought out its report in 2005-06, point out that over the 60 years until then, after independence, India's Muslims, the largest religious minority, were seeing the kind of structural exclusion that was civilizationally reserved for India's scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Something is and was a problem in our method of implementing the constitutional morality that we are enjoined to do because of the articles of the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. The Right to Education Act had to be enacted in 2012-30, where again, we have excluded the 0 to 6 category of children. That act seeks to make alive the 2010, I'm sorry, that amendment to the fundamental rights seeks to ensure that the right to education, universal primary education, is available to every Indian, which is part of the directive principles of state policy. Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar tried desperately to make the directive principles of state policy justiciable, that people could go to court over them. But the issues of right to health, the right to dignified work, the right to fair labor, the right to health, all that largely comes under the directive principles of state policy. Equality, non-discrimination, right to life, right to equality before the law, right of minorities, the right to minorities to propagate and practice their own faith, all of that comes under constitutional rights, Chapter 3 of the Constitution. I would urge all of you who are going into social work today, you, unlike us, who are much older, will be stepping out into an India which is much harsher, which is much more exclusivist, where public discourse has been tainted by a kind of state project that promotes hatred. Hate as a political tool, hate as a media tactic, and today hate as a state project. We are seeing how the kind of hatred we saw manifest yesterday and last week against our Dalit young women, we see similar hatred being perpetrated on social media and Twitter against young Muslim women. Very, very intimidatory, violent social media posts. My organization, Citizens for Justice and Peace, took up these complaints with Twitter. And finally, Twitter was forced to pull down 21 accounts. Every month, we are making anywhere from 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 complaints to the National Broadcasting Statutory Authority over television programs that are similarly portraying hate against one community. And we are trying to educate people and tell them what the difference is between Article 19, which gives us the freedom of expression, and Article 14 and Article 21. Can my right to free speech, for instance, under Article 19, impinge or affect your right to live a life with equality and dignity? If I use the kind of speech that denigrates, that demonizes, that intimidates, that incites violence against a certain section, which is economically, socially, and politically weaker than the position of social power that I come from, can I then claim protection under Article 19? And though India has a poor jurisprudence on hate speech, world over it's been recognized that free speech is not hate speech. And as much as the freedom of speech and expression is a vital component of our individual freedoms, so is the right to a life with equality and dignity of all sections of society. And if that hate speech emanates from people in positions, women in positions, men in positions of political, social, or economic power, and it's likely, therefore, to impact adversely a weaker and marginalized section, which could be religious minorities, Dalits, Adivasis, working class, workers, the economically worse off, then my free speech needs reasonable restriction under the law. India has the laws to protect and to prosecute hate speech. Unfortunately, for the same reasons that I drew attention to earlier, that our institutions of governance, our institutions of law enforcement, unfortunately, have not encouraged the infusion of people wedded to a constitutional ethos. So you have people within our police forces, within our educational apparatus, within our judiciary even, who do not espouse the constitutional morality contained in the Constitution, but actually carry gender, caste, community, class biases. And until India is willing, state and society, to look at this discrimination in the eye and to recognize that something is going seriously wrong, we will not be able to correct. Friends, not so long ago, in fact, earlier this year, before the pain of the second wave hit us, the second surge, which was, I know, also very painful in Tamil Nadu. It was very bad in Maharashtra, the state where I come from, very traumatic in Delhi, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, everywhere. Before we saw the surge of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, 3 international studies between February and March 2021, based on indices of freedom and democracy, all by renowned institutions, showcased a serious concern about our country. They observed that India's democracy was backsliding, leading to a rapid and alarming deterioration of political and civil liberties. Today, India is classified by some of these organizations as only a quote-unquote partially free electoral autocracy. These are the studies by the Sweden-based Varieties of Democracy VDEM Institute, the United States-based non-profit organization Freedom House, and the intelligence unit of The Economist magazine, quite a well-known magazine worldwide. In 2020, last year, India also slipped 17 spots on the Human Freedom Index to the 111th rank. In 2019, we were at rank 94. The authoritarian misuse of the fear and insecurity caused by the pandemic, COVID-19, and the imposition of a top-heavy lockdown, all of these have further exacerbated, further highlighted the social justice discrepancies that our society already faced. In the last 21, 22 months, the rich have got obscenely richer. A large section of India has been further impoverished economically and socially. We have large sections of our people grappling hunger and unemployment. And unfortunately, we do not have a government which is looking these problems in the eye and dealing with them the manner they should. Wasteful expenditure on projects that are meant to eulogize government and leaders continue. And therefore, the whole social justice project today in India is under severe jeopardy. Friends, my organization, Citizen for Justice and Peace, works a lot on on constitutional rights education in schools. We also have been working for the last 4 years on the citizenship crisis in Assam. And 5 years back, we expanded our work to look closely at the whole issue of the recognition of rights over land that our Adivasis and forest dwellers fought for 250 years back against the British. I'd like to just highlight some of these core issues through which our organization has gained some experience. In 1950, when we gave ourselves the Constitution, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 11th schedules of the Constitution gave autonomy of governance, culture, etc., to those areas where our scheduled tribes and the traditional forest dwellers live. Now, while these schedules gave this power, and it was a welcome thing, you had people like, like I said, Jaipal Singh Mudda, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, many others, insisting that these rights should be inviolate in our constitution. What actually happened after independence? When we saw the Zamindari Abolition Act come into place and the land reforms come into place, and this is something we have studied very, very deeply, we found that real land reform was not allowed to take place because suddenly the sections of the Indian population that assumed power in parliament and the assembly were the more entitled sections. So unfortunately, while Article, like I said, 14, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21A, 22, 23, 24, 25, right up to 30 of the Constitution and the directive principles should have been given real meaning, you found a section of the people coming into power who were more interested in allowing the status quo rather than allowing radical social justice and change. For Adivasis and forest dwellers, the Constitution acknowledges the original rights over land of the people, local self-government, cultural rights too. For the struggling people of India, these are contained in Schedule 5, like I said, Schedule 6, Schedule 11 of the Indian Constitution. The 5th and 6th schedule were discussed and passed by the Constituent Assembly between September 5th and 7th, 1949. These days, even now, are remembered by Adivasi rights activists every year and commemorated. Does the rest of India commemorate them? Not so much. The two schedules remain probably the most enigmatic segments of the Constitution, I call them, because constitutional authorities, judiciary, bureaucrats, journalists, and academia are ignorant about the factual realities on these two schedules, as evident from passionate yet factually incorrect writings that keep appearing in our daily magazines and journals. The two schedules provide for alternate and special governance mechanisms, like I said, for the areas carved out under these schedules. Now, it's extremely important as social workers to know these aspects of the Constitution that actually deal with the rights of our most marginalized sections. Large sections of Indians live in forest areas, and those forest areas today are being denuded by a combination of government institutional apathy, callous governance, and a complete takeover by mining and other companies. It is only after a rigorous struggle that began under the British in the 1800s, 1706, I think, was the first Adivasi revolt, and finally culminating in 2006, that 56 years after our constitution was given to us, the Forest Rights Act, which is actually called the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, was passed in Parliament. Today, 14 years after that act was passed, in 2012, certain amendments made it stronger. Today, despite the fact that this law is in existence, and this law gives the right to Adivasis to make individual and community claims over land that they've owned for generations, this right has not been realized. And the Forest Department, that was given power by the British and is the largest landowner even in independent India today, continues to oppress our Adivasis and traditional forest dwellers. So this is an area in which social justice is lacking. In the months of the pandemic, we saw violent attacks taking place by the Forest Department using the local police to actually further hit back at our traditional forest dwellers and Adivasis. So a lot of our work is devoted, along with the All India Union of Forest Working People, our partners, to working there. Social justice remains a far-off dream for India's Adivasis and traditional forest dwellers, And until they actually get their community and individual land rights claims realized, this will be a continuing struggle. Similarly, for our 200 million Dalit population. Similarly, for our religious minority that face different kind of discrimination. Among the Christian community, we see the kind of hatred and persecution that takes place against the Christian community in the name of quote unquote conversion, which we know is not happening. I've always said that one of the greatest contributions of the Catholic Church to the Indian thing, particularly in the last 60, 70 years, has been, maybe longer, 100 years, has been that it has worked with the most marginalized sections, educating, reaching health rights, reaching knowledges of the constitutional rights to the poorest of the poor, and disturbing the status quo. It is because of this disturbance of the status quo that those who want to keep not just the status quo intact, but those who want to actually go back to a Manusmriti kind of existence that and want to overthrow the constitutional order, those ideological forces find it a problem when forces work with social justice. And therefore, the challenge is huge, but I think the way out is to build alliances. We need to make sure that there are alliances between different marginalized sections who need to further their battles for social justice. If we do it together, then it's more likely that those battles will be successful. Manual scavengers, sanitation workers, ASHA workers, unorganized sector of the Indian working class, which is 92 or 93% of the working class, migrant workers whose plight came to India's attention only last year when this mass migration took place, when a hurriedly called lockdown was called. And this migrant worker is also an Adivasi, also a woman, also a minority, also an OBC, also a Christian. So the intersectionalities are all there if we are able to creatively address the absence of social justice from these different sections and keep asking the question, what is the democratic, non-violent, legal way in expanding access to the rights guaranteed under the Constitution and emancipatory laws like Forest Rights Act, PESA, Atrocities Act, like I mentioned, Abolition of Manual Scavenging Act, and try and ensure that access to jobs, land, resources, education, civic amenities, whether it's schools in the area or sanitation in the areas, all this forms part of the social justice struggle. Very uphill task when we see that today Indian democracy is attempted. There's an attempt to take over Indian democracy, money in elections, a supremacist ideology that tends to think that they want one language, one people, one election, one nation kind of ideology. When India, as the land of Periyar and Tamil Nadu, knows it more than anywhere else, India is a diverse country and can only stay together when this dream of this diversity is kept intact. That's why I keep telling people that there was a huge churning in the Constituent Assembly. I keep going back to the Constituent Assembly debates because with every nuance that you read, you learn something more. 299 days, 1.5 years, partition takes place. It's a bloody partition. 3 communities equally suffer. The Hindus in Bengal, the Muslims in Bihar, the Sikhs in Punjab region. I'm giving a broad stroke analysis. And yet, because of the bitter community memories, each community feels that they're the worst affected and the other one is to blame. At the root of it, the problem lies in a sectarian notion of nationhood. What kind of India would we have created? And I keep saying that our constituent mothers and fathers chose a very sagacious, principled, and pragmatic path. When despite the bloody trauma of partition, they decided that if India had to survive as one, it would only survive as a secular democratic republic where equal citizenship is assured to all, equal aspirations is assured to all, equal rights are assured to all. It is that dream that we need to redouble our fight for because it has serious risk today. And I know my time is getting up, so I want to end by just giving a little bit of details to my young friends here on the huge citizenship crisis that stalks Assam and which is likely to stalk the rest of the country if this ill-conceived CA 2019, the Citizenship Amendment Bill, is backed up by an All India NPR and NRC. Friends, my organization began work. We're still working with a young, vibrant team, 5,000 volunteers in the state of Assam in 2016-17. I kept asking myself when we started that work, why we didn't start earlier. The crisis in the state of Assam has been brewing for decades. Finally, very fractious history. It'll take me too long a time to go through here. So I'll just give you a nutshell to say that who is an Indian will the Indian Constitution decide? That is the integral question we need to ask when we look at Assam. National Register of Citizens, voters, declared foreigners. Three different ways in which the poor, hapless people of Assam are being disenfranchised from their legitimate citizenship. Something that Articles 5 and 11 of our Constitution grant every Indian, regardless caste, community, gender. I urge you also to visit our website, cjp.org.in, for a lot of community and legal resources, and also our Assam page and our forest rights page, because you get a lot of information on there. But just to tell you what this has meant, the whole NRC process was attempted as a process following the Assam Accord and a lot of violence in the state of Assam in the 1970s. When we were your age, we were a little bit younger than you, and I remember my college years when the whole Assam movement burst upon the country. Many of us found it parochial even then because it was exclusivist. It was looking at to see who is Assamese and who is the outsider. Much as my state, Maharashtra, has seen that kind of movement, so have other parts of the country. The question is, finally, because of the violence of the movement, etc., there was the Assam Accord, which said that, okay, we'll undertake this process for trying to determine who a legitimate Indian citizenship is through the NRC process. Supreme Court was also monitoring this process after a point. But if you see the results of the NRC, first list comes out in December of 2018, second list comes in July of 2019, first list comes in December of 2017, draft final list comes out in July of 2018, and final list comes out in August 31st, 2019. And in the first list, 1.3 crore Assamese out of a total population of 3 crore were excluded from the NRC. The second list, 44 lakhs, that's 4.4 million were excluded. And finally, 1.9 million, 19 lakh people even today remain excluded. The voters, 1.13 lakh. Declared foreigners, another 1.17 lakh. Totally 22 lakh people in Assam out of a 3.3 crore population. And their families have been impoverished, trying to battle a hostile legal system just to prove that they're Indians. Small date and name discrepancies, calling a woman because she doesn't have documents because she's married underage. So first time she votes is not in her birth name, but in her marital name. So you call her father a projected father, not her real father. The way the foreigners tribunals are adjudicating in Assam is also a complete blow to natural justice and the Indian Constitution. And our organization is working there day and night. We help 12 lakh people fill up their NRC forms. And therefore, when the threat of an all India NRC and NPR came about, which still might come about if this government has its way, we kept telling people that we need to resist this because inherently at the heart of this is an unconstitutional policy. Nowhere in the world a documentary test of citizenship makes you a citizen of that country. In India, we have citizenship by birth, registration, naturalization, but nowhere is it a document that needs to be proved. We have very low birth registration rates, we have very low death registration rates, as can be seen. We don't even know how many of our fellow countrymen and women have died during the COVID pandemic because of the lack of data collection in this country. How can you, therefore, in a country where births and deaths are not registered, very few people have passports, very few people have land or home records, very few people have LIC and all these entitlement things that a very small section of the Indian population has. All Indians need to understand that if ever this documentary test of citizenship is put into force, this policy, then all it will do is take away all attention from our struggle against poverty, against hunger, against jobs, against right to education, gender justice, social justice, and all of us will be put at war with each other, different castes and communities, because all we will be doing, like the people of Assam currently are doing, is protecting and running around to protect themselves to remain Indian. Citizenship is the right to have rights. And to deny a person's citizenship is like a civil death. And that is what is being unleashed on the hapless people of Assam. The state government alone has spent over 1,600 crores in this completely thankless exercise. And people of Assam, impoverished communities, have spent as much as 12 crores, 13 crores, 12,000 crores. I mean, we are calculating all of this. You see it. The rhetoric in Assam is used against one religious community, but when you look at the deconstruction of the 19 lakhs, every section, Rajbanshis, tribals, Gorkhas, Bengali Hindus, Hindi-speaking Indians who live in Assam for the last 40, 50 years, all have been excluded. And we can see now the government trying to do a divide and rule policy by saying the Gorkhas will be allowed, etc., which we are happy for the Gorkhas. The point is that that's not the way to approach such a fractious problem. The way to approach such a problem is to judiciously accept that a documentary test of citizenship is not the way to go. We need to have a more rational process. And therefore, I would just like to end by saying, friends, that India today is really at the crossroads. Whether we go forward with the ideal of social justice firmly in place or slide downwards further into being an electoral autocracy, as we've been described, where fundamental dignities and freedoms are throttled by a police state, only time will tell. The deafening silence from India's influential sections needs to be broken by our outraged voices of protest. I urge all of you to ensure that we speak, and we speak clearly, loudly, so that we can be heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Testa, for delivering us the second session of the 10th Social Justice Lecture. Now the floor is open for questions. Participants who are having questions, you could post them on the comment section here on the chat box. I shall ask the questions on your behalf to the guest speaker. Ma'am, I already have a question here sent to me. Yes, the question is, how can multiculturalism as a philosophy help overcome caste and communal violence?
See, whether we call it multiculturalism or whether we call it plural studies, because pluralism studies, because there is this whole academic debate on whether multiculturalism is the way to go or whatever. But the essence of the question is that what we need to do is we need to, right from our schools and our classrooms, right to our colleges, inject this understanding that diversity is what this country is. That how can it help? It can help by, number one, eventually dissolving caste. I keep referring to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar because he kept on saying, if you want to move towards a casteless society, encourage intercaste marriages, encourage intercaste associations, encourage intercaste associations, not just at a personal level, but at a societal level, at a business level, etc. I remember conducting these sessions in Mumbai where many people from the middle class would say, we don't have caste in Mumbai, Mumbai doesn't have caste, And then all we had to do is, okay, give us one day. And we would say, okay, let's just go and see who is the ones who clean our streets, who are the ones who clean our beaches, who are the ones who clean our sewer tanks. And within 2 hours or 4 hours, the entire realization would dawn, because young people are open. And then a young girl, Lakshmi, I remember coming back and telling me, ma'am, in my building, where IAS officers live, it's a 21-floor building. And I realized when I went and asked this question that this lady who comes and cleans our toilet is not allowed to use the lift. So there is a separate lift for, this is a very old story, but it's 10 years old, but I'm just giving an example that yes, there is a separate service list where the domestics are used, but for her, because she's a Dalit, she can't even use that list because the other domestics will not allow her to. So imagine she's climbing up 21 floors every day and then doing her work. So I think we cannot teach fundamental rights in school without teaching the denial of those rights. It's like Martin Luther King and Jyotiba Phule used to always say that to make equality and discrimination and non-discrimination a real thing among our young, you have to teach them about discrimination that exists. And that is, I think, Indians completely fail to do. We would like to pretend we are the most non-violent, this great civilization. There is many aspects of our civilization which are very great. In fact, the greatest part of our civilization as a student of history, I believe, is the age-old battle between the Shraman and the Brahman. You know, whether it is Mahavir, or whether it is Basavanna, or whether it is Buddha, or whether it is Kabir, or whether it is Phule or Ambedkar, there's been a constant questioning of the status quo. That is very great about our civilization. Why do we try to hide that? We need to bring it out in the open and talk about it.
Thank you, Mrs. Testa, for the answer. In fact, I love the part where you're also, equating it to that of Basavanna and to Kabir. I think we need to have a lot of people who do that kind of activism, who do that kind of reformation in our modern society. The next question that I have here, is the media helping or fueling the level of caste and communal violence in India?
Fueling. And I feel really bad to say it, because I really believe that though I've done law after that, and I mean, education is my first profession, has always been as a journalist. I made that choice in 1983, and it hurts me to say this, but I feel that if this period of India, is ever, this history is written honestly, then the first thing that a historian will write about this period of the last 7 to 10 years is that of a complete abdication of moral and constitutional responsibility by the media. And it's at so many levels, okay? It's at so many levels. It's at the way in which you exclude some news and you include some news. It's the way you selectively portray some people and not portray the others. It's about how, and I'm going to say this, though it might not be, it can make people happy. When we were battling 2002 and the justice process after 2002, suddenly you found from 2008-9 onwards, this vibrant Gujarat and the whole corporate sector coming in to whitewash the crimes of 2002. And you had the top corporates trying to sell the Gujarat model, you know. And I remember telling people, including my friends who were anchors on television channels at that time, that, you know, if India has to face this, we'll be in a disaster. And that's just what we are facing today. Because Gujarat model was a model of jobless growth. You know, it was a model of concentration of capital among a few. Not in, I mean, even today in Ahmedabad, Surat, you have the manner in which you have kind of bonded labor situation, you know, in that in industry, etc. No respect to environment and no respect to social justice. You can see the indices of the state. You can see the human rights indices of the state, independent indices. It's not a very happy picture. But isn't it the job of the media to point that out? I mean, not to try and eulogize one disproportionately over the other as a part of a propaganda mission. Because the moment you start doing that, then you're not the media. You're actually performing a kind of a task for somebody. Let me give you one more example. Last year, sorry, my answers are a little longer than they should be, but I can't help it. Mid-March, 12 to 13 March, you had this one Tablighi Jamaat, that whole congregation at Nizamuddin in Delhi. Lockdown is just declared on 23rd, 24th. Within 4 hours, the whole country is asked to go along. From about April onwards, instead of looking at what the impact of the lockdown is, was it called properly, what happened with Namaste Trump and all that, suddenly you have a spate of television programs, including on respectable channels. I don't have to name them. All of you know the names, English, Hindi, who are just calling one community the Corona super spreader, linking to that. I mean, it's so destructive. It's so divisive. Instead of telling people that, listen, don't panic, face this pandemic, let's face it together, you're actually performing a very sectarian and divisive agenda of a very, very narrow-looking government in power, you know. It doesn't make sense at all. And yet that's what I'm not saying all the media did it, but large sections of the media fell for that too. And we saw this impact, at least in outskirts of Delhi and North India. The impact of this was felt by, the Muslim thelawala or the Muslim sabziwala in the village, because he was also ostracized.
Thank you for that, ma'am. The next question here. Dear ma'am, the values of democracy are deteriorating year by year. People are losing faith in the system. What are the steps to be taken as a citizen to see a real positive change in the country in the years to come? I think partially you had answered it, but maybe you could give some more.
No, just one line to basically say that it's a very disheartening situation, the only way I keep my enthusiasm going is by consistently acting on something. Otherwise, you can feel helpless and, I feel that nothing can be done. We cannot afford to be apathetic. We cannot afford to feel that nothing can be done, because in every small catalytical process, change will come. We don't know when the change will become huge. We don't know. But let's just keep chipping away at whatever level we can towards what we believe is the right thing to do in the field we are working in. It could be child rights, it could be gender justice, it could be migrant workers, but we just need to keep chipping away, because I think at some point change has to come. You can't have this dark period going on forever.
Thank you, ma'am. Fear has been used as a means to control thoughts and expressions, especially in the past decade. Despite all the attacks that happen on people who fight for justice, what gives you the strength to stand for that which is just?
Difficult question, because I mean it's asked quite often, but honestly I don't have a full answer because I don't know. Partly the strength, of course, comes from the fact that you believe what you think you're doing is right, and that you should continue doing it as long as you have the strength within you to do it. We've been also very lucky in terms of our supporters, silent, large numbers, and that gives you a lot of courage. Not everybody speaks out in the loud way, but we've had huge amount of individual, institutional, other support, and I think that matters a lot. This is not a battle you fight alone, because I think that fear, I mean, it's not that I don't feel fear. I do. Fear, I think, is a very legitimate feeling. But when you kind of convert that into action, and that to collective action, not do it alone with a team, when you're building a young team and they're out there, then I think you sort of diffuse the fear a little bit. There's a collectivization of that fear a little bit, and you can find the strength to carry on, But it's tough. I know and particularly for younger people today who'd not seen I believe we saw a better India when we were growing up. We saw a much better India. So I think it must be very tough. But I keep telling you, don't lose hope. Just look at, I keep saying, look at which are the examples. I mean, Rohit Vemula. I wanted to mention his case when I was speaking. I mean, should not that letter of Rohit Vemula, which he wrote on 17 January 2016, be written in every social studies textbook of ours? Because he's telling the vice chancellor of his university in December that year, when he wrote that letter, 1 month before he was killed, before his institutional murder took place, that next time you admit a Dalit boy or a girl or a woman or a man, a Dalit person in higher institution of higher learning, make sure you give a vial of poison and a hangman's noose. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, any other country would be just talking about that. These are institutions of higher education. And HCU is back to that person, that vice chancellor is still there. That's the kind of pushback there has been by the authorities. So we just have to somehow find that strength to carry on. I know it's very tough for younger people today, like I keep saying, because we saw better time. I don't know if they were better, but they were benign for sure. It was not so vicious. It was not so hate-ridden. But then I look at young people, I look at people like, Devangana, Nasif, Tana, and I look at Umar, and I look at Kanaya and Jignesh Mevani. And I get a lot of inspiration from these very young people who are really out there and doing so much. Akhil Gogoi, there are so many. In every part of the country, you can find names. I mean, Kaushalya from Tamil Nadu, she's just amazing. We had this panel discussion on love jihad on Valentine's Day this year, and we called her to speak. And here's this woman who lost her husband, Shankara, in the brutal way. She had the courage to call out her father for it. And, she spoke so passionately about it. And I mean, these are our role models. These should be our role models, because, I mean, they have the courage to carry on. Let's draw our strength from them.
Thank you, ma'am. Due to want of time, maybe we'll take 2 more questions, one by Father Joy. How to protect secularism of our constitution in the context of hardcore religious fundamentalism in India?
Father, we just have to keep harking back, like ISI has been doing. Father Stan we just keep harking back to our constitutional values and stick to our guns and hope that the institutional spaces that have been created in the past have not got completely eroded. I know the state of the election commission. We know the higher judiciary goes up and down. But I think if we just stay firm in our ground, wherever we are, in whichever institution we are, I think those spaces will open up again, and nothing makes up for people's mobilization and people's voices, because I think eventually people do listen. So I think and secularism, I think, is so precious, because I keep telling people that secularism is not something which has come from outside. I mentioned Basavananda, but there's Narayan Guru, there's Frank Antony, there's so many examples we have who are indigenous. This land has breathed secularism. It is a living example of a multi-religious secular society where even the atheist was respected in early time, the Charvakas. So even if I'm an agnostic today, Tisa, I could have been an agnostic then and I was all right, So, I mean, that's the strength I get from it, that it's not come from outside. It's there in the soil. It's just there that the marginalized section, not necessarily in the most corporate or moneyed section, because that section is spending obscene amounts on weddings and their priorities are different. But we need to just get the soul of this country back.
Thank you. Last question for you. Today, Dalit people are still going through injustice. How they will get social justice? India to speak that we are a diverse country, but still people have small thinking.
Very petty, very small. I mean, let's also face it, United States of America, 200 years before us, they got democracy, but, and they also have the George Floyd case last year. So it's not that they don't have racism in their police force. The only difference is that when the protests happened, Black Lives Matter protests happened, you had equal or more number of whites coming on the streets. And I think I'm looking for that time when the more privileged sections come out and say caste is abhorrent, communalism is poison. And that's something which is not happening yet and needs to happen very soon, where the dominant sections, the majority, the more powerful, economically, socially, political, come out in larger numbers and condemn something that is within their societies. That's something we need to aspire to.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think with this, we come to the close of the lecture. Thank you very much, Dr. Ms. Tiesta, for highlighting on social democracy. You spoke about caste and highlighted on various issues where justice is deprived. And you also highlighted on the constitutional provisions, the directive principles of the state policy. You highlighted on the importance of various schedules and the acts that are on papers, but on reality, which are still being deprived for a large number of the population, predominantly the Dalits and the Adivasis of our country. And I'm very grateful to you because you also insisted on equal rights for all. Thank you, ma'am, for stressing on the need for equality, liberty, and fraternity to ensure social democracy. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, Dr. Mini.
I've just put my email in the box in case any student wants to contact me. I'd be very happy to be in touch.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. A leader who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. It's my pleasure to invite Reverend Father Swibert De Silva, Rector, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, to deliver the presidential address.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Father.
Yes. Mrs. Tista Setalvar, for that wonderful oration that you gave and inspired our students. Father Dr. Augustine, the Dean of our School of Social Work, Dr. Alan Godfrey, Dr. Kiran Jeevan, and rest of the staff members of our newly named the School of Social Work at St. Joseph's College. I would like to first of all congratulate you for organizing this program, and as a Crystal Jubilee celebration, and part of it is a wonderful input that you have given to all the students. I'm very glad that such a large number of students are listening to Ms. Tista, and she has been a great inspiration for all of us. I like social work department and all those who take social work as one of the subjects of their studies. I have great admiration for these people because anyone who takes up a subject like social work, I think primarily he or she thinks about the others, the society. They don't think so much about themselves and they're not that selfish. And therefore, everyone who has taken a study on social work, I believe at least that they are the ones who are going to transform the society in the future. They are the ones who have the love for the people, and they are the ones who are going to make a difference to our society. And therefore, I admire all our social work students and everyone who does social work in the field in our country. I would like to mention very clearly to our students and others that there are two important factors in our Jesuit education. As all of you know, St. Joseph's College is run by the Jesuits, and there are many characteristics or philosophies of this education, but two of them make very sense in today's world. First of all, every student of ours who passes through the portals of this institution must be able to differentiate between what is good and what is not good. Not only able to differentiate, but they must have the courage, they must have the gumption, that the guts, I must say, to choose what is right always. And that is what we are trying to tell all our students, and especially the students of social work, that you must be people who have that courage to choose what is right and somehow shun what is not right, not good. It's not an easy task in today's world. So difficult to go along or to go opposite to the mass ideas that are prevalent today. Sometimes you may become individual, you may go alone, you may have to walk the path alone, but still you must have that courage to choose what is right and somehow give up what is not right. In this connection, I would tell all our students that please make sure that when you are at St. Joseph's College, you learn this to choose the best and choose the good. The second thing our education, Jesuit education, tells all our students is that you must be compassionate to people. You must be somehow kind to people. There's no point in having intellectual education and become intellectual monsters. It's very important that we become human beings and human beings towards each other. And every student of us, I wish that becomes more than an intellectual, just an intellectual being, but also becomes a human being along with that intellectual formation. And it's not enough that we make a name for ourselves with our intellectual capacity. Too much intellectuality also can make us either monsters, or can we have all the techniques and the know of manipulating people that can be used for that also. But I wish that all our students become compassionate to each other. And the motto that we have in this college, that is to be men and women for others, is somehow instilled in your life, and that you truly become men and women for others and with others to build up a better society. Social justice, as all of us know, is the just relations between groups or individuals within the society. And the social justice comes from, I must say, the Christian philosophy that all are created by God and all are created equal. That philosophy gives us greater impetus to promote this idea. And therefore, all people should have equal access of wealth, of health, of well-being, of justice, privileges, and opportunities, regardless of their legal, political, economic, or religious circumstances. So this is what we are fighting for. This is what we are all looking for, so that everyone in this country has got equal opportunities and equal access for everything that is available. And therefore, today, social justice revolves around favoring or punishing different groups of the population, which is not correct, which is not good, it shouldn't happen. And therefore, social justice in economic terms, this often means redistribution of the wealth, income, and economic opportunities from groups when oppressors to the oppressed. So I wish that it happens in our institution. And therefore, today, as the School of Social Work celebrates its Crystal Jubilee celebration, I would like to wish all the members of the department, the staff, and the students all the very best. And the social work school today is considered as one of the best schools in the country. It has come within a ranking of 15, and it should come even better now in course of time with the leadership that is given by Father Augustine and the rest of the staff members in the department. I wish you all the best. And as a parting quote, I would like to tell you what I had heard or learned some years back. It says, any good that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. So all the best and good luck.
Father rightly said that the social workers are capable of transforming the society. Instilling the sense of right and wrong is imperative, and that is one of the primary aims of social work school. We promise you that we would choose the right from wrong, be passionate, intellectual, and humane, thereby building a better society where all have equal access for the rights. Thank you, Father. As we reach the fag end of our 2-day celebration of the Crystal Anniversary celebration of our School of Social Work, let me cordially invite Dr. Alan Godfrey, Head School of Social Work, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Minnie. It is with profound gratitude that I stay here to propose the vote of thanks. Crystal Jubilee celebration, celebrating 15 years of professional social work education, practice, and research at St. Joseph's College, comes to an end with a 2-day celebration this evening. First, I would like to thank our speaker this evening, Mrs. Tista Settlevad, who delivered us the second session of our 10th Social Justice Lecture. Thank you, ma'am, for spending this evening with us. I thank our other guest speakers, Rev.Dr. Valson Thampu and Dr. Rita Norona, for spending time with us and sharing their words of wisdom and experience. I am grateful to the management of St. Joseph's College, in special to our rector, Father Swibert Silva, who is with us today and gave us his presidential remarks. Thank you so much, Father. I thank, in absence, our principal, Father Dr. Victor Lobo, for his able leadership, Dr. Melvin Colasso, our registrar, for his support, and I also thank our Dean, Father Augustine Luth, for his guidance in this evening program. This 2-day celebration was possible because of the hard work and dedication of the conveners of the program, Professor Lata Paul, Assistant Professor, School of Social Work, who had put in a lot of efforts in making yesterday's evening a memorable one, and Professor Kiran Jeevan, PRO and Assistant Professor, School of Social Work, who convened today's program. Sir and ma'am, you have never failed to amaze me. Thank you for bringing in such wonderful guests to address the gathering. The 15-year celebration also had the release of its newsletter, The Reach Out. I am thankful to Dr. Rama Gokula Krishnan and his team of students, Ms. Srinati SK, Ms. Rupika Nair, Dr. Minnie Chulil Ravi, Mr. Amal Antony Augustine, and Mr. Harris Joseph. The students in special have worked day and night in the special edition. You guys will go down the history of the department as first editorial team of The Reach Out. Congratulations and thank you. This evening, we gratefully look at the participants of our 2-day program, the government and NGO collaborators, practitioners across the fields, well-wishers from various academic institutions, parents and friends who are with us. Thank you all for joining us. In special, I would like to thank for the Joy James for joining us in the session and supporting our programs. Thank you, Father. The alumni of our school are the crystals whom we celebrate in this Crystal Jubilee celebration. I thank each one of our alumni for joining us this evening. Your support and contribution in the development of our school is deeply acknowledged. This program is made possible for us because of our student team who have pitched in their efforts. I would like to thank them all, starting with the class reps, Ms. Rupika, Mr. Kevin, Ms. Sagarika, Mr. Moses, Mr. Kuryakos, Ms. Chitra, Mr. Amir, Ms. Nimisha, Mr. Sagar, and Ms. Bijala. The MCs for the programs, Dr. Mini, Ms. Caroline, Mr. Kuryakos, and Ms. Monica. The cultural performance and prayer song put forth by Ms. Girija and Ms. Upasana. The class of second BSW for the dance and the first BSWs in special for preparing the games for the alumni session. Unfortunately, we couldn't find time, but your contribution is deeply acknowledged. I thank Mrs. Dikshita for getting in touch with the alumni. In fact, the alumni connected us to the other alumni, and we are thankful to them. The screen sharing throughout the sessions was done by Mr. Sagar, and the video for alumni was made by Ms. Chitra, and the video of the faculty's wishes was done by Ms. Aishwarya. Thanks to you. I place on record my special token of appreciation to Ms. Sagarika and Ms. Rupika, the student coordinators who pulled in their greatest efforts to bring the programs in place. Thank you. The YouTube streaming for the 2 days is done by Mr. Subhash. Thank you, Subhash, for spending time with us. Last but not the least, I thank all my colleagues who have joined me and my students from the School of Social Work, without whose support this event would seem meaningless. Lieutenant Akshay Demandlik, former head of the department, Professor Y.J. Rajendra, Dr. Mary Princess Lavanya, Professor Viola Norona, Father Simon Paul de Souza, Dr. Sherry Tess Matthew, and Father Francis Pinto. They have toiled day and night to bring in together this program. We have had rehearsals going on from 8:30 till 10 p.m. in the night, and my students and faculty, despite the IQAC, NAC, Orientation Committee, and the number of other works that we do, have put in their contribution whenever needed. My students have equally participated, I should say, until 4 p.m. Many of them had their field works, and as soon as they completed, they have joined here with us. There are some of them who are working at areas where there is poor network connection, and despite these challenges, they have attended the session. My heartfelt thanks to all of them. If I have missed any, please forgive me, but I would like to thank each one of you for being with us this evening. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to you too, sir, without whom this wouldn't have been possible. Well, it's not enough to be compassionate. You must act, said Dalai Lama. Our father principal also rightly said yesterday that Josephites don't walk the trodden path, they create path. We shall strive our best to actualize our potential in making the world a better place to live, taking inspiration from an action-packed school. We shall always remember to educate, organize, and agitate. Before I sign off, let me take this opportunity to thank everyone on behalf of the School of Social Work, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, and let us stay connected during these trying times. Do not forget to fill the feedback forms, dear students, and also wishing you a pleasant evening and a great weekend. Let me sign off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Dr. Mini and everyone. I would request you all to just enable your camera so that we could have a group picture, a virtual picture. Requesting Dr. Gokul to click the picture for us. Maybe you could take a screenshot, sir.
Awesome.
Yes, all of you could, you just could enable your videos. You could see a lot of alumni with us, with their smiling faces. Ms. Nikita is there. Thank you. Saumya. Okay. Hello. Danita is there. Thank you. Thanks for joining with us today.
It's done. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's done.
Yes.